see. All right. So thanks everyone for calling in to today's webinar on leadership. I got a few housekeeping items here today, and then I'll pass everything off to Ralph, our guest speaker. Yeah, once again, thanks for calling in. This is our, I guess, first installment of YEA webinar. So this is exciting. I'm glad we had great, I guess, registration. We capped everything at 50, and registration was filled within under an hour. So that's really exciting to see that everyone's interested in this topic. The recording will aim to upload this to the ASHRAE website afterwards and send out a link so you can review later. Ultimately, this is going to be an interactive presentation, and we'll be using breakout rooms throughout to discuss some of the topics in more detail. So with that, I'll introduce Ralph Kaizen. Ralph's passion for transforming individuals and organizations through coaching and learning is drawn from a career which spans several decades working across diverse sectors, including architectural, engineering, environmental services, and so on. And he's been our a lead presenter for the YEA Leadership Weekends for many years. I guess I don't know the exact number, but definitely 9 years. And he was the host for the 2 weekends I attended, and really great speaker, and engagement really gets you thinking about the bigger picture. So with that, I'll pass it off to Ralph.
Okay, super. Thanks, Andrew. Welcome, everyone. So glad that you're here. I'm going to disappear so I don't look at myself, because I'm going to shift to the deck, because I've created a deck that I'm going to use really as a basis for conversation. Okay, so this is the first one that we're doing in this format. I don't know about you guys. I'm doing things in the past 4 months I've never done before, as it relates to, you know, meetings and interaction and facilitating and coaching via a little screen. And so it's interesting. So I want to set up 3 themes today. The first one is around leading in a virtual world. And underscoring everything that I'm going to cover with you guys is the theme of leadership. So think of whether I'm talking about communication, about how our personality styles might influence the way we lead, how we actually think about leading. Everything is about you being a leader. So within ASHRAE, within YEA, within your respective companies, I'd like you to put on that leadership hat here for the next hour and a half and think about maybe just taking 1 or 2 things that I say that really resonate with you and moving them not forward by an inch, but try to move them forward by a mile. What I mean by that is, don't go, oh, he said all these things, I'm going to try to do everything. I'll tell you, you're not going to do it. So pick one. So at the end of it, if you're making notes, keep track and then go, I think this is the one, or maybe these are the 2 that I really want to move on. So there's my suggestion to you to get the maximum value from today. Okay, so when we go to the breakout groups, we'll ask you to introduce yourselves, because I'm not going to assume you all know each other. Just a quick who you are, your involvement with ASHRAE, and maybe even what you do, just so people have a bit of context. And then I'm going to ask one of you to be the facilitator or moderator for the breakout, because after we've had a discussion, we're going to come back. Andrew's going to lead us back through as a group discussion, and that's where we're going to hear about what you guys came up with and the different perspectives. Okay, so I'll keep you in the loop as I move forward here, but for now, I'm going to share this screen, and let's get this show on. Come on, let's go. There we go. Okay. And here we are. Okay. So I'm assuming you can all see something. If you can't, just let Andrew know, because he's my go-to guy if there's any issues. Andrew,
that's good.
We're good? Okay. All right. So I'm calling this the Summer of 2020 Kickoff Webinar. And we're in summer now, and we're halfway through the year, which is kind of scary in some respects, because what this COVID has done to us, it has changed everything up. And so what it has done is, going to this first point here, we are now leading in a virtual world. And you're going to have a chance in a couple of minutes to start sharing how you've been leading, some of the challenges, the opportunities, and maybe some of the breakthroughs that you have discovered because you've been forced to do this. And that's the interesting thing. We know we haven't had the luxury of ramping up for this. It kind of hit us in the side of the face and said, you're in. So having said that, those of you that have gone through the weekend with me, you know that I talk a lot about what I refer to as a whole brain approach. So what you see here is that left brain, right brain. And you guys, by definition, as engineers or technologists or whatever your title is, you are not only smart, because you need to be to become an engineer, but you have been taught how to think primarily in a logical, pragmatic manner, which is good, and it's very important, and we want to keep you doing that. However, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, let's bring up that other side. So let's use what I call a whole brain approach. So I'll be talking today a little bit more about that right brain, soft skill, creative side. So let me kick off by saying, as you lead virtually, one of the important things that you've got to be aware of is that you have to be professional. Hence, I put that in parentheses. So what do I mean by professional? Well, again, I'm not going to read everything to you. It's on the screen here. But when you get into your groups, I'd like you to talk about what you've seen where people have been professional, maybe where they haven't. And this isn't to call out somebody and say, you know, that guy, and here's his name, and boy, you should see him. That's not the goal, but to learn from everyone. And I heard years ago, someone used the example. They said, everybody in life serves an example. Some are good examples, some are bad examples. So if you've seen, which you undoubtedly have, people that you go, boy, I wouldn't want to do that. This isn't a matter of dissing them. It's a matter of saying, gee, here's what they did, and they didn't come across that professional. What could have impacted that? So could have been their appearance, maybe the setting, the tone of their voice. Could you hear them even, right? That's really important. Do they have presence, and do they have presence virtually? Now right now I'm looking at you. I've got a microphone here. I can't see you, but I know, and what's in the back of my mind whenever I do this, whether it be in a workshop or on, via camera, is I know I'm on. And so my first suggestion for you, maybe the first takeaway, is realize that you're on, and you need to stay on. You may have seen this. I just saw it last week, where we're now having people posting what I would call failed Zoom meetings. There was one where the guy forgot his cameras on, stands up, he's in his underwear, he's standing 20 feet away from the camera, scratching his butt, and going, oh man, right? Did we need to see that? Well, no one wanted to see that. However, this is a prime example of be professional, okay? So your image, your brand. Tips for optimizing virtual meetings. Again, real high level stuff, but guys, I am not seeing this even from some of the senior people that I coach, whether they're vice presidents, CEOs. Like I do a lot of executive coaching as well, and you'd think they would get this right. There's one guy, he's an engineer. He's moving into the role of president next year. I'm working with him right now to help him prepare for that transition. And we've been having some town halls. I've been helping him prep for his town hall, how he's going to interact, how he's going to set the meeting. And this is what we've been talking about. Do you have an agenda? Do you have a plan? So you're not the CEO of the company, but it doesn't matter. Are you leading a team? Are you a project lead? Whatever you're working on, and you're going to have a virtual meeting, and whenever you lead, create a plan, send it out in advance if possible with the agenda, frame it. What are the terms of engagement? All that this means is you could actually say, here's how we're going to act and treat or interact on this meeting. You can send this out. There's no law that says I can't tell them how to behave or what I expect from them, especially if you're the facilitator. So that's basically facilitation guidelines. And then just as we're doing today, and what I've tried to do when I've set up today's session, is model some of the things that I'm talking about for you. So we're going to get to Q&A in a minute. So let me go on. This is really important. You've probably, and if you haven't, just go Google this, tips for leading in virtual meetings. You can spend the next hour watching videos. So what I've done, I've gone through a lot of the things that I get, my own experience, and what I'm coaching people on. So what you're seeing here is a list of what I suggest that you are mindful of. So where are you going to have your meeting? Camera, right? Is it built in or external? I'm using an external camera because my internal camera in my laptop is okay, but not that great. I've raised my laptop so that you're not looking up my nose, right? It's not that exciting, right? I bought a new microphone. I have worked on the lighting in my home office here. Just everything that you're seeing here are kind of no-brainers, but they're actually really important because, again, it comes to you controlling the meeting. So I want to just point out the last bullet here around avoid distractions. Ringers, emails, texts, alarms. Please, for your own benefit, so you're not distracted, and for others, before I went on, I took this on my phone and I turned it to silent. These are small things, but every time something, whether it's a pop-up, whenever I do a presentation, I close things off because I don't want to be distracted. So same thing with you guys. Be aware of what's going on around you. And then, because we have a what to-do list, we obviously need a what not to-do list. So here's just a couple of things, and I want to just quickly point out a few, and then we're going to break you into breakout groups here. Being too still. So what I mean by that is if you sit and it's kind of like you're freeze framed, and sometimes people say, did the image freeze? No, the person's not moving. Let them know you're alive. Show a little bit of expression, move, especially if you're facilitating. Get your hands kind of up into the range where they see that they're moving, and your hands, if you've taken the weekend with me, you know I talk about the importance of hands really being resources. They punctuate, they add value to what you're saying. Okay, and then obviously, when you're not talking, mute control. I have a button on my microphone here, but you can do it on the screen. So just keep the background noise out. Okay, and then the last thing, and we're breaking into groups, is this is a glorious opportunity to build relationships virtually. So I'm calling this social connections relationship building. One of the things we did is we had a bunch of planning meetings for this. And a number of YEA committee members said, we've got to also make sure that we remind people that this isn't just all work. So I don't know about you, but I know I've already had coffee meetings. I've had a couple of Friday afternoon wrap up, have a cocktail with another guy, a fellow that works in an engineering company that I've done some work with. So we met Friday afternoon at 4 o'clock. He had his favorite beverage, I had mine. We compared notes, and then we talked about life and about business. You know, get creative. So whether it's over a cup of coffee, whether it's over a drink on a Friday afternoon, the point here is to build connections, because you can see the last point here is no relationship, no trust. So what we're trying to do here is to really use this to leverage. Okay, so over to you guys. So as Andrew breaks you into the groups, just do a quick, my name is, chapter I'm with, why did I sign up today? What was I hoping to get? And I know there's a number of you that have already gone through the weekend with me, either both the first or the second. No, the first and the second. You can't do the second before the first. So both or one or the first one. Say what you got from the weekend, and then here's what you're going to share, relating to what you've been doing using Zoom and or Teams or whatever format you're on. Doesn't matter. What's worked, what's not worked, and has there been anything that you thought, gee, I didn't think that would work as well, or I found this to be really effective. Okay, so that's where we're now going to turn it over to you. So Andrew, if you would kindly put everybody into a group for discussion.
Yeah, everyone's here.
Okay, shall I answer the question first and then get into the quick debrief?
Sure, up to you.
Yeah, okay, I'll do it. I've got it open here. So can you provide an example of terms of engagement? Absolutely. What I do when I facilitate meetings, what I've often done is I'll either send it out in advance, and it will be things such as no cell phones. In some cases, everybody puts them in a basket, and we put them on the side, because I've been in so many sessions where I'm facilitating, and people's laps become very interesting. You know exactly what they're doing. They're looking at their phone, right? Or they're checking emails. And the other thing around this is it's just a matter of courtesy, right? To the person presenting. So especially if you're going to be leading, you want people's attention. And this whole myth of multitasking, I can give you research that supports the fact we don't do it. We talk about it, and some people wear it as a badge of honor. The distraction and the time to recalibrate and refocus is terrible. So therefore, terms of engagement basically tell people in your meeting, this is how we're going to engage with one another. From what we're not going to do, what I'm not going to permit in terms of distractions. It also says how long we're going to spend on a topic. So terms of engagement could relate to time frame, how we ask questions, the intention behind your question. So it's not just throwing stuff out to fill, but so if I asked Alexia a question, so if I want to put in my terms of engagement, all your questions have to be posted, or have to be positioned rather, from the point of I'm asking because. So Alexia, I'd like to know this because, so now we become much more intentional rather than just random and open. You could even, I've done it where I've limited people for how many questions they can ask, because some people you can't shut them up and others they don't speak. And so what I used to do is called the 3 penny exercise. You give people 3 pennies and they, once they spent their pennies, they can't ask any more questions. So people suddenly start thinking, whoa, no, I don't even need to ask that question. You can make that part of the terms of engagement. So there's just different ways to frame the meeting, but I would encourage you to do. You have more control, better outcome, and people value you more as a leader. Is that okay? All right. Okay, Andrew, you want to check in with the groups? You want to run us through this? Andrew, you're muted.
I am mute. Sorry, I didn't know. I didn't know you wanted me to run through these. Okay.
Oh, okay. Well,
yeah, there were 4 groups, so I guess I don't know if each one could see group 1, but maybe just someone from the group from one of your groups just want to let's see, shoot me a message. I can unmute you because I guess you can't talk right now, and kind of let us know, kind of go through what you discussed.
who was in group 1? Sarah, are you the spokesperson? You got to unmute Sarah. We can't hear her. There we go.
All right, I can be a spokesperson. I guess we didn't really talk about it.
All right.
Okay.
So yeah, I think one of the biggest takeaways we had was just talking about actually being on video, and how much easier it is to be actively engaged in a meeting when people can see you, and kind of just even off what you were just saying about it's really obvious when you're on your phone or you're distracted and doing something else. And so I find it's way easier for myself to be engaged, and also it makes other people more engaged when they can see you. So being actually present in the meeting. And also the other thing I've noticed is all these virtual meetings are exhausting. It requires way more emotional or like mental energy to be present in a virtual meeting than it does to be present in a in-person meeting. So it's tiring to have to actively engage. It takes longer. You have to interpret things via video instead of actually how you're experiencing the emotions of the room. So
yeah,
it's way more challenging, and I find myself way more exhausted at the end of the day.
Are you a green dot or red dot? Green dot? Yeah. I'll talk more about that a little bit later when we get to the dots and the whole personality thing, because it's absolutely, for those of you that are the implementers, not the initiators, if you've done the weekend, you know the dots, but I'll talk more about that later. It is really draining. And so I'll speak about how you have to look after yourself. Okay. Anything else?
I don't think so.
Group 2?
I know I have group 4. Tom, I'll jump to you.
There we go. Yeah. And so my group was Kevin, James, and I, and a couple of the main themes of our conversation. One was that we have so much more time to do things now. Because of that lack of a need to travel from job site to job site, less commuting, whatever it is, because everything is done in the same spot, we have a lot more time to do things. Because of that, we found that we can go from meeting to meeting to meeting to meeting, and things really don't break up. When you're really just staying in your own little world, you can go from one virtual meeting to the next, and next thing you know, it's 7 p.m., 8 p.m. at night. And so having to learn how to either take a break, get up, walk away, do a little bit of a lap, or just say, I've done enough for the day, is something that we found that is important. Another thing is the need for preparation, a lot more preparation because of the virtual meeting setting now. So I know Kevin specifically talked about the need for an agenda and making sure that every meeting has an agenda. And rather than going into a meeting and kind of saying, I'm going to present this to you now, look through it during the meeting, and then we'll figure it out later, we have to prepare everything and make sure that it's presentable for the meeting that we're going into. And so you put a lot more thought and energy into that preparation step than if you were just going into a meeting trying to hash it out. And so with that, we've been a lot more efficient at getting things done and implementing things than we previously would have been.
Okay. Did it lead to, because the other thing, when we're working with clients, efficiency is profitability. Are you finding that in some cases where it took you longer to do something, it costed you more, so talk utilization, that this is actually helping to, in some cases, increase utilization? Like, so you when you're there, you're getting more done.
I would say absolutely so. And I know Kevin has some good examples as well. James talked about it as well. On our side, things that would have taken a year or so to get everyone together and to implement it now, because we can get everyone virtually, we've been able to get it done within months. And so just speaking on my side of things, we have really accelerated things that initially we were planning on doing by the end of the year, and now we're getting done.
Which just shows, and I don't want to take us down another path too much, but it just shows how inefficient we were. And in many cases, the meetings for the sake of meetings were just burning up time, energy, and the environment, literally. So yeah, cool.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's go to.
All right, let's jump to group 2 and Brady.
Hey, thanks. I'll quickly say sorry for not having a camera on, and it's kind of one of the main points I wanted to touch on. Our group kind of talked about the challenges of being prepared for these types of events. Today, my camera has decided to break, and I did not check that before this. So it just kind of goes to show that, you know, preparing for these meetings virtually needs to be kind of a more robust process than you might have done in face-to-face meetings. With the different platforms that are out there right now too, be it Teams, Zoom, whatever you have, you know, you need to know how to use these platforms before you get into those meetings. Otherwise, you know, a lot of time can be wasted with people jumping in or out of the meetings or losing connectivity, that kind of thing. So those are some of those challenges. Another one that I have personally from working at home, three young boys running around the house, it's difficult to keep that separation for work and personal life. And, you know, when you're sitting in meetings with clients or other things like that, having a 3-year-old come screaming through the background, yelling about whatever's on his mind, you know, is a challenge to deal with. And it's definitely something that was not there before. So the work-life balance becomes much more of a challenge when you're doing virtual meetings, at least working at home. So.
Yeah. Anything else?
The other comments that kind of came out, you know, having everyone presented in front of you on a screen staring at you and talking to a camera is a much different feeling than that face-to-face interaction. And kind of like has been said, it takes, you know, a lot more effort to stay present and to do things this way. It's a much different approach than face-to-face meetings.
And Brady, to that point, this is a very important point, is you start realizing who actually is good at presenting and communicating, because when you're stuck on one of these, people that said in the past, oh, I've done a lot of presentations, they may have talked a lot. That doesn't mean they've done presentations. There's a big difference. And welcome to my world. That's why I end up coaching companies and people to go do presentations, because it's not just talking at somebody, it's framing it in a way that has impact. So it's very interesting. A lot of things that we used to assume or go, well, I can do that, no problem. We're suddenly realizing when we're forced to look into a camera on a screen, we're maybe not as good as we thought we were, which is a learning opportunity. Again, so I don't say this, guys, if those of you know me, that's not a negative comment. It's a self-awareness thing, right? That's really important. Okay, next group.
All right, so group 3 is Sarah Sullivan.
Hi. So our group kind of talked about different programs.
Sarah, do you have a camera? Can we see you, if possible?
Oh, yeah, here. Okay. All right. I'll turn on my camera. I just gotta rearrange my desk.
Oh, okay. Well, if not, if it's awkward, it's okay. It's just prefer to see who we're talking.
Yeah. Okay. No, it's all right. Let's see. I'll turn it on real quick. Okay. Hi.
Excellent.
Hi.
Hi.
Okay. So our group kind of talked about different online programs that we've been using. So Teams was a really popular one. My company uses Slack, and we're transitioning to Teams. So we kind of talked about best practices and creating channels for different projects and kind of figuring out how to recreate the, especially for quick hitting designs, how do you get all hands on deck, kind of recreating that. I usually work in a bullpen, it's a very open environment. So instead of just shouting, hey guys, I need help, figuring out how to coordinate resources, kind of have to think further and further ahead. So we kind of talked about that. Another thing, we've been using Bluebeam Studio, where we can kind of assign different tasks to people, and we all have our accounts to create more visibility on what everyone's working on. So those two programs have been really helpful in that case. Let's see, we also kind of talked about how much virtual meetings, like etiquette, has improved. I know that I had very few virtual meetings before, this whole COVID situation, and they were kind of plagued with all sorts of technical difficulties. Even at the beginning, you had a lot of people taking meetings outside, and there was just a lot of background noise, things like that. So it's been a transition, but I was really pleasantly surprised how quickly people picked things up, and how our virtual meetings have, the quality of the meetings have definitely improved.
So Sarah, are you talking primarily about young people, or have the old guys got on the bandwagon too?
No, actually, no, my whole office, I was surprised. I had a lot of older coworkers who—
It's okay, you see, I'm raising the point, so don't worry. I mean, it's like, I'm okay with it.
Who always struggled with, computer help. Like I've as the engineers, you kind of part IT sometimes. And I've been really happy to see that they're all gung-ho about, all the virtual platforms, and they've been really enjoying them. So that's been a good progression that I've seen.
Well, just a quick segue. I spoke in Atlanta, and then last year in Orlando, the best practices mentor-mentee relationships, within ASHRAE. And that's one of the things that I was talking about. That's why I asked the question. It's very intentional. This has been a glorious opportunity for different generations to get to know each other. And rather than we're different, it's just, one's older, one's younger. So what? Get over it. What can we learn from each other? That's the key. I call it Generation H, Generation Human. So if you want another gen, there you go. I just gave you one.
All right, perfect.
Add that to your mix. Okay, good. Thanks, Sarah.
No problem.
Are we done, Andrew?
Yeah, that was all the groups.
Okay, excellent. I'm just realizing that on timing, we got to, I'll move this along, right? This is great, guys. So thank you very much. It's our first one. So we're kind of, we're tying our shoelaces while we're running the race here. So let me get back to this and then move to the next one. So here we go. Here we go. Okay. So the leadership mindset. So I talked earlier about this whole session today, this webinar being around leadership. And we started off talking about how do leaders communicate and organize in a virtual world. So that was great. And I'm really impressed with the input. So thank you everyone for sharing. But I want to take it a step further now, talk a little bit more specifically about leadership. And again, we'll break you out shortly, and then you guys can have a go at this. So the first point here, act when you see an opportunity. This goes directly to one of my clients. They're not an engineering firm, they're in a different sector, but case in point, it's about leadership. I work with their entire leadership and management team, and I've been coaching them for years. And so we've had to, obviously for the COVID, we put everything on hold. Now I just had a virtual strategy session with them, a 4-hour session, 2 days ago. So again, same thing that we're doing about, we're moving it, and it actually worked really well. In person is obviously better. However, relating to that company, here's the story I want to share with you. What really ticked off and frustrated the managing partner of this firm was that when everything hit, he was, from a government grants, finance, having to decide, cutting back, what do we do? How are we compliant from a health and safety point of view? he was leading all that. And I remember having a call with him one day, and he said, you know, Ralph, one of the things that actually has disappointed me the most is people that I thought would step up haven't. And so what I did, I then, as I had my coaching calls with all his people, said, you know, here's one of the things that I heard back where there was some disappointment. And my comment to them was not to make them feel bad and say, what were you thinking? Why didn't you? Like, I wasn't going around giving them a smack in the head. I was saying, why didn't you, or why didn't someone step up and do, and I won't bore you with all the details, but there were a number of areas that he just expected someone else to do it. So I've now leveraged that, or using the current word pivot, I've pivoted from that to use that in my coaching to say, do you see an opportunity? Are you acting? And and then here, the next point, I intentionally position the two together, because one thing is act when you see something. Don't wait for someone else to do it. And when you go through airports, remember the post 9/11, if you see something, say, wasn't that New York? It was some city came up with that campaign. If you see something, say something. It was New York, I believe. It's that kind of mindset. But I want to take you to the next point again around leadership. I'm not going to go too deep on strategy and business, but there's a definite mindset, pardon me, for companies that embrace what is called as a first mover advantage. And you can look this up. Go Google it if you've not heard about it. It may be something for those of you that are in leadership roles. I know, Tom, you were saying earlier you've got a larger team, I believe, and I don't know all of you in terms of your areas of responsibility. But if you are leading a team and it's like somebody, you know, you're walking down the sidewalk and you see a dollar bill lying on the street or a $10 bill. Yeah, people walk by it, and first mover advantage means bend down, pick it up. It's your $10. And that's a great metaphor in business and within your organization. If you are a leader, and you obviously are, otherwise you wouldn't be here today, or aspiring to develop your leadership habits, there's something to be said for the person that takes the first step. In some cases, as my example with my client was just the managing partner was disappointed with who didn't act, thought would act. But then there's also a strategic opportunity for you within your organization to build your leadership brand. And then maybe even a business opportunity for you to move over your competitors. Okay, point made. You can talk more about that in your group. Now, here's an interesting thing. Create a support and challenge network. I was just reading an article yesterday from a fellow on LinkedIn, and he was referring to Adam Grant, the author and university prof, and Tim Ferriss, you probably all know Tim. Anyway, Tim Ferriss had Adam Grant on as a guest on a podcast, and was really interesting that what came up, and that's why I built it in here, is that they have, I think it was Tim that has created a challenge network. And we often talk about, you need a support network. You need people that are there for you that kind of help you get through stuff. Yes, you do. But what about for you as you develop your leadership skills to have a challenge network? And what this means in a nutshell is people that get in your face, people that don't let you off the hook, people that aren't in your echo chamber. I don't know if you've heard that term before. Echo chamber simply means I surround myself with a bunch of yes people that agree with me. And this is the bane often of executives, where the executive team, they all say yes, or they implicitly say yes, because they don't have the guts or the backbone to call no. They don't have the courage to challenge. And quite frankly, the organizations that are going to come out of COVID, the people that are going to come out of COVID from a leadership point of view, are those that don't just have a support group, but they have a challenge group. So think about that for yourself. And again, I'll let you talk about that in your breakout. The other thing is mental toughness combined with human sensitivity. We have to be fair but firm, right? There's all kinds of ways to position this, but this, again, guys, is an opportunity for you to demonstrate that logic, that toughness, and that candor while still being human. I'll talk more about that soft side when I get to EQ in the third section. And then leading with an infinite mindset. This is actually a reference to a book by Simon Sinek. He's the Start With Why guy. And typically any session I do, people say, can you recommend a book? Well, there you go. There's your book recommendation. And you can probably get a summary if you just, download the book, or I would recommend buying the book if you're serious about this stuff. In a nutshell, what's Sinek talks about, and why I put it in here, too many of our businesses have been finite minded, meaning quarterly results, utilization, annual quarter profits, reduction of costs. They're all lagging indicators. They're primarily financial or quantitative metrics. The thing that I've been talking about in the weekends, and those of you that have spent the weekend with me and listened to me present, you know that I'm incredibly passionate about creating a forward-thinking, or as Cynic now puts it, an infinite mindset. So I'm not going to say too much more about that because I'll let you can do your own research, and again, in the interest of time. But are you thinking or primarily thinking quarterly and quantitative, or are you thinking relational, organizational, strategic, and value-based? That is what we need today, especially as we come out of COVID, because a lot of the old constructs and things we used are gone and they ain't coming back. Okay, so along those lines, what I call success habits and a leadership mindset, here's again a refer to Simon the why, but Simon didn't invent why. It's been around forever. He just kind of codified it. But this is where, as a leader, even more so now than ever, and the last 3 months have been a great test for you to see, do your values actually mean something? More importantly, do you have any? And as it relates to, we all have values, but as it relates to how you lead and how within the organization, within ASHRAE, or even your YEA chapters, if you're one of the executive within your local YEA group. That leads me to the next point. If you've ever heard of, it was Admiral Stockdale. He was in the US Army in Vietnam era. This reference comes directly from Good to Great. It's a book, another book that if you've heard me present, I say build a bookshelf, which means this is one of the books you should buy if you're serious about leadership and about not just engineering, but about developing your business and leadership skills. Collins talks about Stockdale, and he interviewed him back in the, I guess, late 80s, early 90s. And Stockdale was in the Vietnam internment camp there for, I think, something like 5 years. He made it through. A lot of people didn't. And the point of what got him through, and my point for including this is, which has now been dubbed the Stockdale paradox, is what we need you to do, what I'm asking each one of you to do as it relates to today's session is be positive, believe you're going to not only come through this, and you've already come through a lot, but confront the brutal facts. Is there still stuff that you as a leader need to be doing today, this week, next month, through to the end of the year? I'm now starting to talk to my clients about how we finish 2020 and how we start setting up for 2021. What are we going to have to do? And this is very important for you as you get into your planning, because that's starting now for most companies, summer into fall, confronting the brutal facts of our current situation. So what do you need to do as a leader within your company, within your team? And then how can you lead that discussion? And then just some suggestions here for what I call habits and mindset to become more effective. And if you've not heard of this analogy, I'd encourage you to Google it. There's a great video from Stephen Covey. He's the 7 Habits of Highly Effective People guy. It's about 20 years old. So once you get past the suit and the lapel and the tie width, what he's saying makes as much sense today as when he said it. It's the rocks, pebble, sand, water analogy. It's about prioritizing. It's about you focusing on high payoff tasks that are valuable and rewarding, not just financially necessarily, but also intrinsically and organizationally. So I'm not going to say more because I'm going to encourage you to go look it up because it's an important concept. That does tie into, again, a leadership mindset of focusing on things you can control. The stuff you can't control, don't ignore it. Be smart too, but figure out how do we work through this? How do we prepare ourselves? Which then speaks to, are you developing yourself? What are you focusing on? What are you doing? And I'll just bucket the next couple of things here to simply say, if you haven't been looking at what has been sucking your energy, time, and has been distracting you from staying on point and growing in these last 3 months, now would be a good time to do it. Think of unsubscribing. When I coach people, I get them to create a drop list or a stop doing list. And that might include how much time you're spending scrolling and being distracted on YouTube and on Facebook and whatever. You've got to ask yourself, the 2 hours that I blew today, potentially, if you're honest with yourself, I'm not getting that back. Did that make me a better leader? Did it make me more effective? Or did it take away from time I could have been resting or exercising or spending time with my family? And the last point with exclamation, I'm just a big advocate of reading. Reading, there's an old adage I heard years ago, leaders are readers. And now we can not only read with books, we can read with podcasts, you can Kindle, you can do all kinds of stuff. Okay. All right, back into the group. So as it relates to leadership, this mindset I'm talking about, What has been working for you? How have you been stepping up? What has not been working? Maybe there's been some surprises. Maybe you thought, okay, this is, I'm going to keep doing this, and you realize stuff you've done in the past has not been working. Okay, so Andrew, if you can throw us back in our groups, please.
All right, I think that's everyone, Ralph.
Okay. Let's do what we did last time. Just pick a group, and then we'll hear from a person in that group, and they can share.
All right, group 1, and everyone can now unmute themselves.
Okay.
Sure, we earned
Our
that.
spokesperson again. We talked about a lot of different things, but I think probably what we talked about the longest is, well, one, we talked about how important reading is, and Chelsea had some good book recommendations just about teams and probably communication. I guess none of the rest of us had read them, so, but she highly recommended The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team and Crucial Conversations. So,
Yes.
which Ralph endorses, so it must be good.
No, they're both, they're great books.
And then you were talking just about the importance of having a challenge network and how easy it can be to fall into a trap of just thinking you're amazing and thinking you know everything, because
But you are. Right?
Sure. Yeah. But we were just saying, even like regardless of your political stance or like what you think about what's going on in America right now, it's pretty easy to see what happens when you surround yourself with the people who you want to surround yourself with. And so I think just having an understanding of how to refine your own opinions on things, and if someone's challenging you to do them or challenging you about them, it forces you to think about why you think what you think, instead of just it being what you've thought about forever, or what someone told you to think. And so it forces you to actually engage in, this is why I think the way that I think, or this is what I believe, or this is how I think this should be done. And maybe you end up with the same opinion afterwards, but you've at least then kind of taken it through a filter of this is important, not just because someone told me it was. So
excellent. And let me remember my opening slide: left brain, right brain, whole brain. That's exactly it, because it's not just one or the other, it's both. And so that's a great point, Sarah. We want to balance our opinions with facts and empathy and understanding, right? That humanity as well as the logic. So I think it's a great point. Thank you.
Yeah.
Can't hear you, Andrew.
Group 2.
You need that sock puppet again.
All right.
So that was.
I can chat on this one again.
Brady.
Sure. Yeah. So the main area we talked about was the taking the initiative and being the first to get in there and say you'll do something, and kind of contrasting that against the idea of not always just saying yes because you can, and being willing to stand up and say no, this isn't right for me, and giving that feedback as well, and how that plays in. Our group is kind of split, where I'm in a management position within the company, and I greatly value feedback. Like Ralph says, I need to have people telling me when I'm screwing up or when they don't like things I'm doing. Otherwise, I can't help get them to those positions they want to go to. I can't push our group in the right direction. So having people stand up and have that take that initiative is great if that is something that they actually want to do. So finding the right balance with that is a challenge. And yeah, that was kind of where most of our conversation took us.
Okay. And I just saw Chelsea put now discover your strengths. Yes. And that leads into Strengths Finder, which we do on little plug for YEA 2.0, right? That's Marcus Buckingham and the lead up to the 2.0, the Strengths Finder. So yeah, another great one. Okay. Super. Thank you. Group 3.
Love Strengths Finder. Yeah, go ahead, Sarah. Sorry.
No, you can go ahead.
No, I'm all good.
All right. Sorry. Group 3 here. So we kind of were talking mostly about like personal productivity and kind of work flexibility. We've noticed that, I'm a lot more empathetic with people and their work schedules, especially with, people taking care of their kids at home, not having daycare or, schools, and they are working, later hours usually. And before, I think that wasn't as acceptable, but now it's kind of everyone is very understanding and accepting that, there's more of explicit trust that, once people get their work done, it doesn't matter when they're working or, how they're working, as long as it's, their stuff is getting done. And then we've also kind of talked about having to kind of create more boundaries between work and your personal life. I know when I started working from home for the first time, I kind of felt this pressure that I was on call all the time, and constantly answering emails. I'd look up and it's, 7:30 and I'm like, oh my gosh, where did the day go? And so kind of creating those, like working hours for me, and also kind of giving myself a little bit of a break to say, okay, just because I'm awake doesn't mean I should be on my phone in the morning. I just, take a step back and relax, eat breakfast, just, enjoy my morning before, I get kind of geared up and ready for work. So kind of creating different routines and different barriers to be more productive and more successful in kind of a virtual environment.
Yeah, excellent. Okay.
Then group 4, James, Kevin,
Or
Tom.
Yeah. For us, we just continued the presentation conversation. There was a discussion of how we interacted with our teams before this versus now. And so specifically going into the virtual meeting, how we used virtual meetings, from using it almost like a conference call where everyone has a black screen, but you're able to present things on the screen so that everyone can be together, to a meeting like this where everyone is on the screen, you have a presentation, it almost feels like a virtual conference room. And so the advantages of each and some disadvantages. And so specifically talking about meetings where you have a larger group but only one person presenting, and then everyone else on the camera is just looking down, or they're off in their own little world, and how distracting that can be to the person who's actually trying to present. Versus if you do that in person, it's almost not as bad because your eyes can go to somewhere else or focus on something that doesn't distract you as easily. Like you were saying, Ralph, everything going into this small box, focusing in, you realize who's a good presenter and who just thought they were a good presenter. And then we transition to the relationship building, or the ability to build a relationship with your team versus the virtual meeting session. And so going out of this, will we just do some of these meetings virtually that would have otherwise been in person? And if that's the case, what are we losing because of that? The ability to interact with your team outside of the meeting, going out to dinner or catching up with people across the country. And Kevin himself, he was talking about the fact that now the group that he's a part of is working from home, but the people that they work with on a daily basis usually all are still in the office or in the manufacturing floor. And so this drift between the two teams, where before one could go to the other and the engineering team could go out on the floor if they needed to now they're not there anymore. Yeah. And so working through those difficulties as well.
Yeah. We're good, Andrew?
Yeah, I saw in the chat there's some questions about YEA Leadership Weekend 2.0 and whether or not that's going to occur in the fall. So that's something we're going to be working through this summer. And part of the reason of this discussion today is to kind of feather out, would something like that work? And I think today's discussion is going pretty good. So we'll potentially look at doing hopefully some type of virtual meeting and discussion along those topics in the fall, if we can kind of work out all those details.
Well, and let me segue to that because I saw it come up, and I know that for some very good reasons that it has been canceled, and so we're looking at options. I think the smartest thing, we were talking about that when we got on the call initially, the worst, let me put it this way, guys, and let's just be real honest here. The worst thing that can happen is in a rush to get us back in the room, we have an event and, 10% of the people that attend that weekend get sick, right? We just got to be smart about this. This is not going to last forever. And therefore, as we go through this, we also need to lead. And I'm coming back to that theme, and lead well and lead intelligently. I'm finding some real upsides from doing these kinds of this kind of work now. And so I'll just get kind of, Tom, to the point you made a moment ago, let me throw out my thesis around this. I actually think this is the reality we're moving into. And I saw something on LinkedIn a couple of weeks ago from a guy in the Middle East who runs, it's Collier's, the project management group. He was based out of Saudi Arabia. And he also used this term that I've been using with my clients for a couple of months now. I'm calling it a new hybrid reality. Once we're now in the new normal, new is going to drop. It's just going to become normal. And here's my take on what normal will be. I think we're already in it. It'll get refined more, is that we're going to use both of these resources more and more. And I actually think that's a good idea because it goes back to, I think, a lot of waste, a lot of things, like actual inefficiencies that, and just things where people have just kind of, they wing it. Let me put it that way. But I think by hybrid, and I'll give you a quick example. I'm working with an executive team now. They're an engineering firm. I'm going to be with them in September. But every month I have a 2-hour Zoom call. I'm taking them through their strengths assessments. I'm doing the dots, like the personality profile. Some of you know what I mean when I talk about that. And I'm able to do incremental education training, if you will, sessions to get them aware of this. So when we actually come together in September, I'm not going to have to teach and educate. We'll already be at a high level of proficiency. I'll be able to take the group to another level of discussion. That may be what we end up doing with the YEA weekends, 1.0 and 2.0. I don't know what it's going to be like, but look, clearly I'm the old guy in the group. I'm not scared of this. I'm excited about where we're going because innovation is the key to success. And if you think back of the course of human history, all we've done is innovate. If not, we'd be dead. None of us would be here, right? So it's like, let's get creative. Let's think about how we actually lead by using different tools and resources. So for me, I'm calling it a hybrid. Is that reasonable? Seeing a bunch of nodding. Good. Okay. Thank you.
Works for me.
Okay. So watching the time here, you guys are actually you're talking more than we thought you were gonna. I mean, we're almost out of time and I still have one thing to cover. So here's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna go to the last segment. We're not gonna do breakout anymore. I'll walk through this and then we'll just do a group discussion and any other Q&A you have, and then we'll wrap it up. I'll come back in 10 minutes and ask if some of you have to leave. You gotta go, right? Because we said 90 minutes. But if people want to hang around afterwards, for those of you that want to stay, I'm prepared to continue on for another 10, 15 minutes if you want, if there's interest, okay? So let me just dive in and continue and finish the sucker off here, and then we can, okay. All right, so the next piece, if it will allow me to advance. There we go, okay. So there's something that some of you have heard about but never seen. So this is just to kind of go, and this is not where we're going, just to be clear. All right, so I want to talk a bit about communication, not in terms of, be a better listener, ask better questions, which of course we all should be doing, and that leads to improved communication. But more at a deeper level, again, from a leadership mindset. And this is what we talk about in the Leadership Weekend 1.0, and then we go deeper in 2.0. Leadership is really about effective communication. Effective communication, I believe, starts with a foundation of transparency, integrity, and honesty. Those are values and traits. I can't teach you, well, I can teach you how to be more honest, I guess, in the sense of watching your decisions, the way you treat people, but at the end of the day, you're going to decide whether you're going to do that or not. I can't make you do anything. But in order to communicate and build trust and a willing following, this is the foundation. Then also, I've talked about this before in the opening. I came back to it about 10 minutes ago, that left brain, right brain. So here's another reference to that image of the left, right brain, what I call whole brain thinking, whole brain leadership, technical, relational. The relational moves more into the emotional intelligence, or EI. What I'm going to suggest, if you have not, if this term is still fairly new, or if you've not heard about it at all, look up emotional intelligence and look up Daniel Goleman specifically. Now, the other thing is, and this kind of, I'll refer to the follow-up today's session, if you want to connect to me through LinkedIn, if we're not already LinkedIn, I'd encourage you to do that, because I do weekly videos, usually 3 a week, and then I do blogs and I reshare stuff that relates to this kind of thing. So you might find some of that of value. But you can also message me then and say, hey, you referred to emotional intelligence. Can you send me a link? I'll send you links to some videos, or even Daniel Goleman's summary of what he calls emotional competencies. And he breaks it into 5 key areas. And I've saved talking about it. You can email me and I'll get you that stuff. But emotional intelligence is the glue. It's the mortar. It holds the bricks together. It's the thing that binds and creates trust and vulnerability. So when we talk about candid communication, this is where I wanted to kind of go for a minute. I'm referring now specifically, again, that engineer I'm coaching who's moving into the role of president. We talked about this, and I coached him for his town hall, because there's the existing president and he's moving in, but we've talked about how he's already preparing himself and how he is creating his leadership culture and value system based on what he's doing. And when we talked about communication, they had a town hall about 6 weeks ago. I told them, don't hide behind the challenges, get in front of them. And there's probably lots of examples. And when we do a little open mic here in a few minutes, you can share those if you got a good one. Don't use anonymous emails and press releases to hide behind what needs to come out of your mouth if you're leading a team, or certainly within your organizations. We want to hear from the leaders. We want to hear what she and he have to say about what's going on. We may not agree in principle on everything, but we will respect you. That's what candid communication looks like. Take control and tell people what you need to do. So again, some of you are leading teams, you're leading projects. Bring it right down to that level. That's candid communication. And that also speaks to employer and your customer or client confidence. That depends on you being seen as being trustworthy and following worthy, if I can put it that way. Bad grammar, but you know what I mean. Okay, so just a couple of things about communication essentials. I coach people on this a lot. Your nonverbal says more than your words do. So in other words, actions speak louder than words. Are you self-aware? Do you listen to yourself? Zoom, meetings, Skype, and there's many, have the record feature. If you are not recording yourself and watching yourself post-session to see how you came across, you're missing a glorious opportunity for learning and self-development. I've been vlogging for years now. I know, and this is me just going, I'm so great. I just know I keep watching and I keep changing every month, incremental. I do that because my commitment is to get better. I'm no rocket scientist. You guys can do exactly the same thing. It comes down to, are you self-aware? And then are you willing to self-control, self-regulation? Next point. Do you want to get better? The point that I've been coaching a lot of people around leadership on in the last couple of months is I talk about the words and the music, and I may have mentioned that in the weekend, so this might resonate for a couple of you. All I mean by this is what you're saying, are you supporting it with the right words? I'll give you a quick example of what I mean. So if you're putting death metal music to a love song lyric, I don't have to explain that any further. You get it, right? I'm not hearing what you're saying. First of all, I can't hear it because it feels like you're screaming at me. Conversely, if I'm trying to get something really important that needs to be said with in the right tone and right energy, and I'm trying to play some sort of background music, again staying with this metaphor, I'm not going to get it. So do the words and the music align? So think about this. Ask somebody, right? Because we want that challenge group. Get the challenge group that you've given permission to give you feedback, okay? And then get rid of this, whatever, and you can add whatever you want to add to this, because when you start listening to yourself, you start becoming aware of there's a lot of filler. And the more filler there is, the less effective you are in communication. Okay, now I'm going to talk quickly about the dots, and then we're going to open this up. So those of you who've gone to the weekend know about the dots, but I'm going to do this in reverse order because when Andrew and I, or a little committee, when we were preparing, they said not everybody knows the dots. So let me introduce you to the dots by virtue of the personality matrix. You all have some level of awareness, or your companies may have used Myers-Briggs, DISC, colors. There's all kinds of stuff out there. Basically, the self-awareness piece for you needs to be, which one of these four? And you have all four. So there's a dynamic of you that is perhaps more relating to the driver. So people that are higher verbal and less emotional. I'm sorry, I just realized in this slide, this actually cut off in the top. What should be up here that says lower in emotion. So these people are more factual, more of that left brain analytical. Well, there's the analytical, there's the driver, right? So this would be often what we find, especially the driver, is one of the red dot traits. But if you are somebody who tends to be more direct and analytical, less emotional, more factual, that's probably what you lead with. And that's what we see in you. If you're someone that is more expressive, talks more animated, more relationship oriented, these are probably your top strengths, your top, the quadrants, if you will. You probably lead here, these would follow. And then if you split it again, if you are more verbal, so again, people that are the A types, they talk, but they talk at you. They don't often talk with you. The expressives, these are the talkers that just love to talk. Often they don't say anything, they just need to talk, right? So you need to be aware of where you stack up, both in terms of emotional orientation and then verbal versus less or lower on the verbal scale. So are you more in your head, or more factual, or more feelings oriented, maybe don't say as much? So again, I'm going really quick. I'm just kind of putting this out there for you from an awareness point of view. But those of you who come to the weekend, if you haven't yet, this is, I can tell you, one of the biggest takeaways when we start talking about people's dots. And this takes it to a fairly deep level. And this, we get into what we call psychometric profiling. So we don't, and it's not weird. So we're not profiling you in terms of something we're going to follow you around. It's the profiling as in self-awareness. So very quickly, initiators, who are people who have higher levels of assertiveness and lower levels of detail, because these four dots represent assertiveness, sociability, pace, the pace and speed at which we make a decision, and the level of detail we require. The people in the weekend that are the red dots, we know are more risk-oriented, tend to be more results-driven, more that driver-oriented that I had in the previous slide, more direct, more decisive, and they often end up in roles that are more leadership or management focused. Whereas people that are less assertive, so more that analytical, less social perhaps, much more patient, methodical, pragmatic, and higher on detail, which is the classic engineer profile, which this one that I happen to be looking at is, if I created a benchmark profile for an engineer, that would be it. That's it right there. Lower assertive, lower social, high patience, and high detail, if you're doing pure analytical detail work. So this is also now something that plays into how we communicate, because you can see that whether people are red or green as an implementer, or then people that have a narrower profile, with, we look at all four and we count the width from the left to the right. And if people have less than 3 centiles of width in their total profile, we call them a facilitator, which means, this gets to get confusing here. So on the weekend, we go into this, but hopefully you can just track with me. You can be an initiator and be a facilitator. You can be an implementer and still be a facilitator. The dot, the red or the green, is determined by the relationship of your assertiveness to detail. Okay, so there's the initiator, there's the implementer. Then you also get potentially a secondary description of facilitator based on the total width of your profile. Where this becomes very important is that when you're inside an organization, having that self-awareness of personality means, for some of you who may be initiators but are facilitators, you still need to amp it up a bit to be heard. For implementers, you maybe really need to amp it up a lot to be heard, because you want to lead with the facts, but sometimes you just need to put your fist down and say, this is it, this is where we're at. Okay, I need to end there again in terms of the interest of time. So this was going to be the breakup, but now we're going to do it as a group. So let me just come back to the group for a sec. And okay, we've gone just a few minutes over. If you have to leave, go, but what do we do? Another 10 minutes, guys, or where are you at? 10 minutes is good? Okay. All right, sorry, this is the part where I'm kind of putting the pig through the hose. I realize, or the pig through the python, or whatever term you like. Questions about this. So let's just do this as an open discussion here. Thoughts, comments, questions?
And everyone can unmute themselves if you do speak up.
Yeah, I have a question. If we wanted to find this to evaluate ourselves, what could we use as what is it called, or how could we find this?
Yeah, I'll go back. The dots that's become the nickname in the week, and people say, well, what are your dots? So referring to the dots, it's actually called the People Profile System, PPS. That's the acronym. That is something that you have to buy. This is not one of those freebie online things, drinking game kind of personality test. This is a serious go deep. And so you have to buy. I happen to be a distributor of that. If you're interested in that, you can reach out to me. We can have a direct conversation about that. But yeah, that's something you have to purchase.
Or you can register to the YEA Leadership Weekend when they will be available and get this done.
And that's the best deal because we embed the price. It's a significantly reduced price to ASHRAE, and it's part of it's your ticket for admission, right? So
Awesome, thank you.
I just have a couple comments, Ralph. Going through both your weekends, obviously a lot of the material you touched on today was pretty familiar, but the spin about putting the spin on the virtual aspect of leading really helped me in the aspect of, in my job so much, I'm not a leader in a case of I don't lead many people, but more in my hobby, I'll call it Boy Scouts. I lead a group. Yes. Yep. Yeah. So I lead a group in that aspect. So doing the virtual stuff has been cumbersome for us, especially with youth. I came on today to see what kind of tips and tricks you're talking about, and I appreciate that. But I think what I took away from today, and I had a little bit of a brain pop, I call it, light bulb moment, is, we all sit through those weekends with you and everyone else, and we learn so much. We walk away from that weekend with so much information and so much about ourselves we learn, and then life gets ahead of us and life gets in the way, and we forget about this stuff. And I think if you continue doing these virtual little meetings or hour-and-a-half sessions, I think it's a good reminder of, we got to slow down and think about ourselves, think about self-awareness, and make sure we're still on the same track that we want to be on personally and developmentally and all that kind of stuff. So that was something I just thought about during this whole hour-and-a-half.
Thank you. And so I'm going to jump to the end in the sense we were going to give us feedback, because this is the first one. This came really out of a conversation Carrie Ann and I had, and then Alexi got in, and Andrew and Rachel and a few others. So we want feedback as to what you guys like, what's working, and if we can do more of these. So, today was really a test. So glad to hear that you already got that out of it. That's super.
We passed the test. Awesome.
I'd agree with that. I know a lot of us, especially when we left 2.0 last year, said we wish there was a 3.0. And so I think that this is a good way to not necessarily have to put together a 3.0, but it gives people an opportunity to continue to connect and learn. And even if it continues to be virtual long after it's able to be in person, I think it's just a good touch point to have.
And Sarah, this may be the beginnings of 3.0, right? Remember I said hybrid, right? I'm not just trying to be clever and go, I've invented a new word. I've thought about this a lot. I really believe this is the new reality. But to your point, if we want to keep this alive and keep equipping and building and refining and building a cohort of like-minded people that you guys can offline and challenge, support, whatever you want to do, yeah, maybe that's 3.0. Maybe we don't have to be in a room. It can be virtual.
Yeah.
That way you can include a lot more people, keep costs down. So
Correct. Yep.
It really
we
opens the
create a
door.
community. We build a community of leaders that because eventually you guys age out of YEA, you become toys. You all know that, right? You go from a YEA to a toy.
Mm-hmm.
Too old for YEA? Yeah, okay. That's what toy stands for.
Don't
You're too
remind
old
me.
I
for
always
YEA.
get made fun of since it's also my last name that I'm the only toy in YEA.
Oh, that's right. Yeah. Okay.
And I wanted to add to that I was one of the people that were supposed to go to the YEA weekend that got canceled, and I was bummed about that. So I was really excited that this opportunity had popped up for us to connect and kind of just know what the weekend is about, and this got me really excited. So I'm really looking forward to whether it's virtual or not. I think virtual works great for me. I was sharing with the group that I definitely discovered my introvert self through this working from home and this confinement. But thank you so much. I think I learned a lot through this, and talking to the group was really great. And one of the things that I'm trying to do this time, and I encourage everybody to either reach out to me or other people that are interested in talking, is just on LinkedIn, or if somebody that I don't know through social media that is inspiring, doing something different than mine, or whether it's in the leadership realm or not, to just reach out and do like Ralph mentioned, a virtual coffee or something, now that we have a little bit more of a stretched day, to just kind of learn what that person is about and what we can learn from each other.
Let me, on that point, given you've self-identified as an introvert, here's the book. If you guys haven't read it, it's called Quiet by Susan Cain. It's written by an introverted lawyer, right? She used to be a Wall Street lawyer, and then she did research. It's an excellent book, and I would encourage you to read it, because it's not just how to be a better introvert, right? This is all about, she really challenges people who claim to be introverts, and there's a lot of them, and she highlights people that are introverts, who have been incredible leaders, right? We actually need people that self-define as an introvert in leadership roles. We really do. Because if we don't have them there speaking up, and that's why I'm so passionate about this weekend, because I love working with engineers, because so many are that left brain, more introvert, and they sell themselves short. Here's one thing, those of you that have come to the weekend, I showed this to the guys when we had you in the room. This is one of the things that I talk about. You're better than you think you are, right? And this is what I throw around the room. This is kind of when we do our breakouts, we facilitate, right? People get to talk. Part of what I do is put air in your tires. Too many of you undersell yourselves, and you think, well, I'm an engineer and I'm this or I'm a that. Stop selling yourself short. Did that come across clear? So therefore, create your little group. So here's a suggestion. If 4 or 5 of you want to create your own side group, get the book, read it, and start a little chat group where you talk about this and what you learned from it. There's one great thing to take already from this. Yeah.
Honestly, I think.
Thank you for the recommendation. Go ahead, Ray.
Another feedback thing I have about this whole session was, and I think Sarah and I talked about it in our first breakout session, was, why we signed up for this. And it was literally because I saw your name on it, Ralph. Like, I saw you were facilitating it, and I'm like, well, I'm going to sign up. I have the time. Like,
thank you.
We all, I think, again, if you haven't been through the weekend, it's a great program. But if you have been, I think we all can agree that, it's a different group of people once you leave that place. So, and, I'm more open about myself and what I do and how I'm a person in this setting than I am in other settings. And it just helps everyone, I think.
Thanks, Bradley. Okay, we've hit that extra 10-minute mark, and I'm still okay because I get lots of margin here. But in respect for your time and your jobs and whatever else, I don't know, do we want to wrap it up, or want to pour yourself a coffee and chat for the next 15 minutes? Anybody want to stick around?
On my side, I'll need to go.
Okay.
Thank you, everyone, for joining. We will wait for your comments and everything if you want to write us a quick email about it. Thank you.
And Alexi, do you want to say anything else about the weekends, or have you said enough?
Actually, please feel free to check Ashtray website under the YEA section. We'll be adding some more content, and as soon as we're able to restarting either online and or physical, you'll have some information. Continue to check out for the newsletter and everything. And when we're sending some invitation like this, be rapid, be on the spot, because normally things are getting full quickly. So encourage you to look closely to YEA stuff. Thank you, everyone.